I've been looking forward to doing this call all week. You never see people, or I never see people like that over here, which could be I don't get out enough, or it could be because we've been in lockdown for a year, it doesn't help. So I'm thinking, well, okay, so is this a setup? Is this kind of real? What's happening here? I know you both. I just thought I'd ask.
I think it's a question for you because you are the demographic, you are from China and you are on TikTok.
Yeah, in my perspective, the reason why you probably don't see it every day is because the Chinese consumers, we use a different TikTok, and the contents on different TikToks are very different as well. Secondly, the reason why you don't see it over here as much is because the market on Chinese TikTok is very much evolved and mature. So a lot of the videos are staged. At the same time, a lot of the videos aren't, with, street photographers and influencers being captured, or people on the street being captured. There are hundreds of street photographers every day, like waiting at famous landmarks or famous shopping malls in Shanghai, Beijing, Chengdu, and other cities.
It reminds me of several times this has happened in different cultures, but way back in the 1970s, when punk sort of erupted in Britain, there was, to be seen, you had to go down the King's Road in Chelsea. And I guess there were similar scenes in Tokyo throughout the 80s. For the Harajuku, that was one thing. But this seems to be a lot more, and I guess just times have changed, but the visuals seem to be a lot stronger. I mean, I'll just play you a piece of, you'll recognize this straight away, if I can get to it. Hold on one second.
Yeah, of course.
So that piece of music and other pieces of music are so powerful in delivering this sort of, kind of highly polished, very accomplished, completely sort of successful way of communicating a look. It's as good as any catwalk.
I just want to run, hide away. You just want to tell me to go.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it normally comes down to the youth. They choose their own way of expressing themselves. Of course, it's normally connected with music culture. They're referencing, history in some ways. And that newness is going to be introduced in different mediums and different channels. Maybe not all of them, but the majority of them, you see that they becoming business people and they are selling, what perhaps, they're wearing, which perhaps might be a big difference between how the previous generations or the previous moments in history have been recorded and have been presented to us versus to what is happening right now. And I think it is about the street culture, and streetwear culture, where everyone almost became an advertisement by walking and whatever they were.
You become your own shop, not just your own shop, but you're your own model. You are your own advertising campaign for your own shop. It's all. And Stephen, if I was to go into kind of some of the streets in the right districts in Shanghai or Beijing, would I see many kids like that?
You will see many kids like that. And actually, you can see people with all kinds of styles. The styles, it's got elements from all the countries. You can see punk, you can see Japanese Lolita styles, and you can see the traditional Chinese styles. You can see Y2K styles. Every style has audiences.
We talked earlier in the week, and you said that out of the sort of trends that were on the streets now, one of the main trends is the Han Dynasty.
Yeah, as Hanfu, the dress originally from the old dynasties adapted to the new culture and also to bring back the culture that we have.
I've seen just incredible visions that look like, these kids are really kind of committed to what they're wearing. They almost seem to be having the swords on the back and all that sort of stuff. For me, it feels like a departure in terms of how people are expressing themselves, how people are marketing themselves. I see similar sort of looking kids, and I'm not sure if they're the same kid or not, but there's one boy who's got like tattoos around his neck. They are incredibly good looking. It's quite a vision. Are there filters being used, or is it kind of, literally? I mean, I know there's a sort of slow motion filter, but not filter, but it's a slow motion thing that they do. But are there filters being applied to the imagery?
Some of them, of course. There are different filters that can target for your face to look smaller, and for your legs to look a lot longer, and you can even adjust it.
That was why I was amazed, first of all, when I saw some of the videos, is how long their legs are. And I'm thinking, I've never really seen anybody that looks like that. Not even in modeling world, occasionally Nadja Auerman or there's these models who are incredibly clear, but it's so rare you see some of those proportions. And here they are walking in twos, and this thing's so it's a filter.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of them. So talk me a little bit through the music, because the tracks that are used with the films, I mean, like the one we played earlier on, are incredibly. Some of them are very, very powerful. But are these tracks that have just been grabbed out of kind of popular music, or are they created for this?
Rock, rock, rock. Woman. Feel this.
街头听到 ，Yeah， 此刻我独领风骚。
Better get that money.
Popped off, then your girl gave me just a little bit of lot chop.
Motherfucker think twice. But don't touch motherfucker think twice. You don't want me to my bang bang.
How the tracks works, if one user decides to use this track, and then most of the time all the users can use that track, and some of the track might become popular because of the views, and then all the people can use it for the same purpose.
I mean, I clicked on a few of the comments just to see kind of what people were saying, but of course nearly all of it's written in English. So I'm thinking, well, where are these comments coming from? Because these are Chinese kids, so why aren't they writing in Mandarin? Or why am I seeing English comments on it?
The platform you were seeing was definitely extracted from the Chinese TikTok.
Right, okay.
So they downloaded from the Chinese TikTok and then uploaded from the platform abroad. The original one is definitely, the Chinese kids with Chinese descriptions, and some of them has like the shopping links.
This makes a very big difference for the future of retail, Stavro.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that right now everything is happening digitally. It is definitely the future. It cannot be ignored, because also it's an extremely popular tool to the biggest selling demographic, especially when we talk about the market in China. It works completely with its own rules when it comes down to the influencers, when it comes down to how you promote or engage with the audience. It's extremely different from what we consider internationally.
And now Malaysia and Thailand, TikTok is going to launch the similar shopping link. Yeah. So let's see how it's going to work in other regions. And also, videos are super powerful. At the same time, live streaming, the viewers feel even more connected.
So live streaming is a big thing.
It's a huge thing. The influencers, they can sell billions in one live stream show. And, those influencers and they can start from different things, but now they are on TikTok selling almost everything.
Motherfucker think twice. But don't touch motherfucker think twice. You don't want me do my bang bang. But don't touch motherfucker.
In terms of the history of fashion and communication, it's just super interesting. So I remember going to fashion shows back in the 80s and 90s, and it was pretty much a very small crowd of people who went. And then you started seeing, I guess like you've always have done, you started seeing, well-known celebrities sitting on the front row of fashion shows. Then you started going to fashion shows and you'd go through a layer of kind of wannabe kind of kids who were desperate to get into the fashion shows but didn't have a ticket and didn't have any access at all. And they're all being held outside and trying to get in through windows and all that sort of stuff and trying to blag their way in, and they buy tickets off you. Well, so there was but then that part of it, the people who actually weren't allowed in the fashion shows, then became bigger. And you had this kind of almost like a sort of circus of different people around the fashion shows. So the kids would dress up to go to the fashion shows, not that they were going to get in. I mean, that obviously was what they would like to do, but actually it was a focus of where people could be assured that they would be seen by the world's fashion press. And then, of course, then people started going to photograph the kids who were dressing up to go to the fashion shows, who were never going to get in, but their fashion shows happening outside. And then it seems to be that has evolved even more, and now they're not even going to the fashion shows, they're going to the streets, and they are the fashion show. So it seems to be a complete sort of not a reversal, but just a sort of a complete refocus. And correct me if I'm wrong, from what I understand what you're saying, Stephen, is the brands will send their products to the influencers who either wear them themselves or put them on models or people that they like the look of. Is that correct?
Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes those influencers have really successful brands themselves.
Right. Okay.
And they just put it in the shopping link, and they are already selling when their videos are successful and people are seeing.
So these are people who are actually putting their own clothes that they've made on themselves or on models and putting them in the street and then selling them through that interface, as it were. But there's an awful lot of Raf Simons out there, and an awful lot of Fendi. Who are the popular mainstream brands that you're seeing most of on those sort of videos?
Balenciaga,
Okay.
Celine,
Yeah.
Hermes, with the accessories.
Those established brands like the Hermes and the Vuitton, are they sending clothes to influencers to wear, or are the influencers having to go out and buy them and then put them on? And is there any sort of, if I was, or if you were an influencer, would you get that life jacket from Vuitton, and would they say, okay, we'll cut you into kind of 20% of sales you create, or not that organized yet?
They maybe do that to personal shoppers when they have, really a lot of clients, but maybe not to the influencers yet.
Where else is it happening? Is it South Korea? Where other big areas where this sort of thing's happening?
In Japan, it's happening quite a lot. The same thing that's happening in China, I have never seen anything happening in the rest of the world. And when you go to the street and seeing the catwalk, you will be shocked by how many photographers are, shooting you. When it's popular, it's literally like hundreds of them. And a lot of them are, retired men doing it as a hobby.
Right.
I think the fundamental difference with China is that there is a whole commercial mechanism behind it, which is attached to this, which we don't have in London. Let's say an influencer, like in China, right? And wearing their own things, like their own.
I'm just stopping. I'm sorry to be pedantic, but just so I'm sure I understand. I don't go, yes. An influencer, in this context, is not the person that is being filmed, or is the person that's being filmed?
It is the person that is being filmed.
It's somebody who has a physique and a look to them.
Exactly. And then they will wear, apart from wearing, the big brands and, the ones that you can identify with, or it could be a mix with holding an Hermes bag, for example, but then the outfit is what they have designed. Then they will normally put it on Taobao and see the engagement, right?
Yeah. Now, basically, TikTok and Taobao, which is like online shopping center. It's all linked together. So,
right. And so, but they're ordering the clothes that the influencers have designed and made themselves. They're not ordering the Vuitton or the Hermes or the. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so pedantic on that. I just wanted to make sure I did understand.
No, absolutely. And these
things that one gets instinctively, and other things one thinks, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There are influencers that are selling designer brands on TikTok, but I'm not sure if it's a direct sales from the brand itself, or it's some kind of a deal from other mediums.
What we consider influencers quite a lot of times in the Western world, I think is completely different of who are the influencers in China.
In the Chinese TikTok, even if you have only one follower and you create a content, and that will become successful, then that content will have millions of likes.
Right.
Because everyone in the world can see it has something to do with the music selection, the track selection, and the text, and a lot of different factors. So now everyone can be influential, literally.
So the people are dressing as if they are characters from the Han Dynasty. Do they wear anything that's from any of the conventional brands, or what they're wearing? Where is it from? From the stuff they make themselves? Where are their clothes coming from?
There are a few really successful brands only making handful, and some of them are individual sellers with small quantities, and a lot of those clothes can sell up to thousands of pounds only for like one thing.
Oh, really? Right. So they're pretty haute couture version of.
Yes, really. A lot of them can be, the embroidery can be like real gold. And it's becoming more and more common. Like when you see people dressing like that on the street, people don't get fascinated about it because it's really common to see now.
Really? Right. If you were dressing up and you went out on I guess, what days of the week do they go out? Is it every weekend? Is that kind of a fair assumption?
It's every day.
Okay. So if you went out,
and the street photographers are working, there are, stylish people walking on the street every day.
Nice. Often the way the video seems to run is that somebody comes around a corner, they're not looking at the camera, they're just normally with their friend, and then they turn, and it goes into slow motion, and they kind of give a sort of knowing side glance, I didn't try and do it, knowing side glance to the camera, as if a kind of complicit understanding of what's going on, and then they look away and they walk off. I mean, the funny thing is, Stephen, I started my career sort of 40 years ago as a street photographer. I was photographing what was happening on the streets of London in 1979. And, there were things happening. You saw people really dressing up. I mean, sort of post-punk era, people were really experimenting with how they looked, and there was all the Blitz kids. And it was a pretty small scene. But then London, if you go to the King's Road, or if you went to High Street Ken for Hyper, those were regular places you'd go and you'd see kids dressing up. So I started my career doing that, which is kind of why I'm sort of slightly fascinated with this. And a magazine, the only place at the time with the media available, the only place at the time that was publishing these pictures was the very, very young ID magazine. But it sounds like it was much, much less organized than where it is now. But that's the first time I've known, that was the first time, in my opinion, that really you had this intersect between people saying, okay, I'm going to dress up, go onto the street, be recorded, and appear on some sort of media platform. Back in 1979, it was ID Magazine. Well, back in 1980, actually. It was ID Magazine, and now it's a kind of TikTok. So it's just sort of funny to see how these things kind of change and modify, but are basically the same idea. There was much less commerce involved back in those days. I wasn't paid, and people on the street weren't being paid, and there was really no money whatsoever. But it's the same spirit, though. It's that same desire to show off, to appear, to exist, to be recognised. All those sort of kind of basic human instincts of approval and desire to sort of show how fantastic you are, which, filters or no filters, these people do look fantastic. I mean, that's part of the thing that works so well about this, is as a vision, and if we ignore everything else, as a pure vision, of a pure visual, they're amazing. I mean, they're sort of, really fantastic looking, which of course comes down to the basic thing about fashion. You have to have an aspirational vision, otherwise people are not interested in it. And an aspirational vision can also mean lots of different things. It can also be the photography of Nan Goldin and films like Christiana F. So it doesn't have to be kind of highly polished. Aspiration comes in different forms. But for this phenomenon, it is super highly polished.
I think what I find extremely interesting with all this is that we all know that, a lot of times anyway, designers, like when they want, to get inspiration from, they're looking towards the same, people, the way that they dress, the way that they put things. It's almost, those unsung heroes, are coming back forward, and you can see they coming on the front line. And I find that very, very interesting, because I know a lot of designers are looking exactly the same people, and you see them in mood boards and you see them in different ways. So it's fantastic to see them on the front line, and this been recorded for the next generations as well to come.
Yeah, I do think it's done so well. And it is so. Just to go back to the example I was saying, so the sort of the two people come around the corner, they look towards camera in slow motion and they walk off. When the video cuts, because obviously we don't see it, is there any interaction between the photographer or the filmmaker and the kids? Do they then stop and swap addresses, or is there any sort of, or do they just literally kind of glide on by?
I'm sure it can have different scenarios. Yeah, they would have interactions, like to, change clothes, or they just walk away if it's not staged. Yeah, but a lot of them that I saw definitely looked staged. Some of the videos you sent me, the influencers, they have millions of followers, and they have, like a really successful company and team behind them.
It's amazing when you compare the numbers from what back when in old media, where ID magazine used to sell like 3,000 copies or something, if that, when it first started. It's virtually incomparable, but it's the same phenomenon that's always been going on. Okay, well, I mean, all that's super fascinating. I guess the last question is, where do we think it's going? What's going to happen in the next year or so?
I think maybe the shopping link in live stream and TikTok videos might become worldwide.
Okay, there's lots more things we could chat about, but we should probably just we can keep it reasonably focused. Thank you both very much for explaining that to me. I do think it's fascinating, and my brain's whirring away, kind of trying to work out where it all fits in and what can be done. But I think it's for me, it's very interesting in the continuing evolution of fashion communication, in terms of the imagery that's produced. And in terms of the basic thing is people wanting to, look good. It's that dandy, that sort of, kind of desire to show yourself, which of course you see, so much through history. Take it back 300 years, you're still seeing it. So it is super interesting. And for me, it's, whether it's the court of Louis the 16th, or whether it's the right places in Beijing or Shanghai, it's still for me the same phenomena of wanting to appear, wanting to be.